Adobe ADBE Beginner's Guide. If you have ever opened a photo on your phone and thought, I wish I could clean this up, or signed a lease as a PDF, a portable document format file, you have already used something Adobe built. This is a beginner's guide to what Adobe actually does as a business. Quick reminder up front, this is for learning only, not investing advice. So, what does Adobe actually do? Adobe is a software company that sells creative and document tools, almost entirely by subscription, meaning customers pay a monthly or annual fee instead of buying the software once. The company did about $22 billion in revenue last year, and the business splits into two big buckets. The first bucket, which is roughly 80% of sales at about $17.5 billion a year, is called creative and marketing. This is the famous stuff: Photoshop for editing images, Illustrator for designing logos and graphics, and Premiere Pro for editing video. These products are bundled into a subscription package called Creative Cloud. Adobe also sells tools to large companies that produce a lot of marketing content, things like Experience Cloud and Gen Studio, which help a brand crank out personalized ads at scale. And there is Firefly, Adobe's own generative AI, artificial intelligence that creates new images, video, or audio from a text prompt, which is now embedded across all of these apps. The second bucket, about 20% of sales, or roughly $4.5 billion, is the document side. The headline product here is Acrobat, the app you have probably opened to view a PDF. Adobe actually invented the PDF format back in the 1990s, and today it sells Acrobat plus Adobe Sign, which lets you e-sign a contract, plus a lighter free-to-start product called Express. The customers here are everyday knowledge workers, small businesses, students, and consumers. Underneath the hood, Adobe rents its computing power from cloud providers like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. Think of these as giant warehouses full of computers you can rent by the hour. Adobe partners with AI model makers like OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic, and it also licenses content libraries to train Firefly safely. The output is software delivered over the internet, and the input is roughly $26.1 billion in annual recurring revenue, which just means the run rate of money customers are committed to paying every year. About 850 million people use an Adobe product each month. So who does Adobe compete with, and how does it win? Adobe's competitive position, what people in finance call a moat, meaning the thing that keeps rivals from catching up, is rated narrow. That is investor speak for real, but under pressure. Let me explain why. On the creative side, Adobe's edge for decades has been depth. Photoshop, Illustrator, and Premiere Pro are buried so deep in the workflow of professional designers, photographers, and video editors that switching costs, the time and pain of moving to a new tool, are enormous. Designers have years of muscle memory in these apps, and the file formats are an industry standard. But here is the twist: newer AI-powered tools like Midjourney, Runway, and a browser-first design app called Canva are catching up fast, sometimes in months rather than years. What used to take Adobe engineers years to build, effects, templates, dashboards, is now cheap to generate with AI. Adobe's defense is twofold. First, distribution. More than 30 million paying Creative Cloud subscribers and deep relationships with big enterprises mean Adobe gets the first shot at upselling new features. Second, Firefly is trained on licensed content, meaning images Adobe has the legal right to use, which makes it safer for big corporate customers worried about copyright lawsuits. The moat is shifting from only Adobe can do this to Adobe does this most safely. The document side, Acrobat, and the PDF format is sturdier. Legal contracts, government filings, and financial documents are all built on PDF. That is what investors call a system of record format, meaning the format itself is the standard, and AI cannot easily abstract that away. Here Adobe competes with Microsoft and a digital signature company called DocuSign, but the PDF franchise is one of the most durable assets in software. What are the key drivers for the business over the past 5 years? 3 forces have driven Adobe's growth over the last 5 years. The first is the subscription transition. A decade ago, Adobe sold its software in a shrink-wrapped box. You paid once and owned it forever, which is called a perpetual license. Today, about 95% of revenue is recurring subscriptions. That switch gave Adobe a predictable cash stream and let annual recurring revenue compound at about 10 to 11% a year. Predictable revenue is a big deal for a software business. It is the engine. The second force is AI monetization through Firefly. Adobe built its own generative AI models, more than 30 of them, and embedded them across its apps. Customers consume what Adobe calls generative credits, basically prepaid tokens to make new AI images, video, or audio, and that consumption is growing more than 45% quarter over quarter. Firefly's subscription and credit revenue grew 75% in a single quarter, and the AI-first product lineup tripled its recurring revenue year over year. This is Adobe taking the same AI wave that threatens it and turning it into a new revenue line. The third force is enterprise content automation. Big companies, think a Nike or a Coca-Cola, need to produce thousands of personalized images and videos for marketing every week. Adobe's GenStudio product, which automates this content supply chain, grew its recurring revenue more than 30% year over year. New enterprise customers for Firefly grew 50%, and a set of newer agentic AI tools, AI agents that act on their own to optimize a marketing campaign, already have more than 650 customer trials in progress. To wrap up, so in one sentence, Adobe is a software by subscription company whose creative apps and PDF franchise touch 850 million people a month. And it is now racing to turn the same AI wave that threatens it into a new growth engine through Firefly and its enterprise content tools. As a learner, the thing to keep an eye on is whether generative AI consumption, credits, Firefly subscribers, enterprise GenStudio adoption keeps compounding fast enough to offset the AI competition coming after the core creative apps. That is the real business question for the next few years. And as always, this is educational only, not investing advice. Thanks for listening.